Welcome to Fact Fusion. We explore some creative photography ideas that can change your thoughts. Have you ever looked at a photograph and felt like it was telling a story beyond the frame? The first time a photo really inspired me, I can still clearly recall. I was at a coffee shop on a wet afternoon, leafing through an old magazine. My attention was drawn to one picture, which had a solitary tree silhouetted against a striking sky. I was struck by the image's light, composition, and emotional impact, which made me realize how powerful creativity can be in photography. This was the beginning of my adventure into the realm of original and creative moment capture. We're going to delve deeply into the realm of creative photography in today's video. Regardless of your level of experience, I'll be offering a wealth of ideas, methods, and recommendations that will elevate your images from average to spectacular. Stay with us until the end, and I promise you'll walk away with new inspiration and practical skills to elevate your photography game. Let's get started on this creative adventure together. 1. Introduction to creative photography. You're in the perfect place if you've ever thought that your images lack that creative spark, or if you want to try something different and break out of a rut. We're delving into the intriguing realm of creative photography today. We're going to delve into creative methods, distinct viewpoints, and inventive ideas that will enable you to view the world from a fresh angle. Photography is more than just taking pictures of what you see. It's also about using your creativity and vision to interpret the world around you. Whether you're shooting with a smartphone camera or a high-end DSLR, what makes your images unique is your ingenuity. 2. Understanding your equipment. Let's start by talking about your equipment. To capture artistic images, you don't need the priciest camera, but knowing how to use your gear is essential. Learn the fundamentals of controlling your ISO, shutter speed, and aperture first. You can play around with different effects with these parameters. For example, you can get a narrow depth of focus using a wide aperture, low f-number, which will help your subject stand out against a blurry background. This is ideal for macro or portrait photography. However, a high f-number small aperture enhances depth of field and retains more of the picture in focus, making it ideal for landscape photography. 3. Mastering light and shadow. The key component of photography is light. You must become an expert at using light and shadow if you want to produce dramatic and captivating photos. Natural light is a really powerful instrument. Golden hour, which occurs right before or just after sunrise, offers warm, soft lighting ideal for landscape and portrait photography. Don't be scared to use shadows for play. Although direct midday sunshine might be difficult to work with, it can also be artistically employed to create intriguing patterns and shadows. Captivating images can be obtained, for example, by photographing through a lace curtain or by using a colander to cast dots of shadow on your subject. 4. Creative composition techniques. An excellent photograph starts with its composition. A nice place to start is using the rule of thirds. Divide your frame into 9 equal parts by drawing 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines. An image can be made to appear more balanced and captivating by positioning your subject along these lines or at their intersections. However, rules are supposed to be broken. Play around with unusual arrangements. To entice the audience to look closer at the scene, use leading lines like rivers or highways. You can add context and depth by framing your subject in front of natural features like trees or entrances. 5. Playing with perspectives. A photograph can be entirely changed by altering your point of view. Try getting low to the ground or locating a high vantage point as an alternative to shooting at eye level. A high perspective might provide a more expansive view of the scene, while a low angle can accentuate the strength of your subject. Tryouts with odd perspectives can produce visually arresting shots. For instance, capturing an unremarkable landscape from straight overhead, or a bird's eye view, might transform it into a striking, abstract composition. 6. Incorporating motion. In photography, motion may give your shots a feeling of vitality and energy. A slow shutter speed is needed to capture motion blur such as that seen in flowing water or on moving vehicles. Make use of a tripod to stabilize your camera so that the movement can produce lovely light streaks or gently flowing water. Another method to portray motion is panning. You can capture a sense of speed and energy by keeping the subject in focus while the background blurs by tracking a moving subject with your camera and utilizing a slower shutter speed. 7. Using props for creative effects. The most intriguing props are occasionally made from the most basic items. Commonplace objects like prisms, fairy lights, or simply a piece of cloth can give your pictures a special touch. Prisms may bend light to add rainbow reflections, and fairy lights can produce stunning bokeh effects. Playing around with various props can produce amusing and surprising outcomes. To add creative flair and distort the image, try shooting through a textured surface or holding a piece of tinted glass in front of your lens. 8. Experimenting with color. One of photography's most useful tools is color. It can accentuate a point, set the tone, and bring harmony or contrast to a picture. Gaining an understanding of color theory can enable you to take more calculated and successful shots. Complementary colors, such as orange and blue, for example, produce a striking contrast that can really make your photos stand out. Using different tones of the same color, monochromatic schemes can create a more muted and unified aesthetic. Adobe Lightroom and other post-processing applications can also assist you in achieving the desired impression and enhancing colors. 9. Macro photography magic. Techniques for stunning macro shots. By taking extremely close-up shots of small things, macro photographers are able to expose minute details that are frequently hidden from view. Invest in a specialist macro lens to enable you to focus at much closer range and produce beautiful macro images. To minimize motion blur, use a tripod to keep your camera stable. Be mindful of your lighting. Ring flashes or natural light might provide more even lighting for your subject. Try varying the aperture to adjust the depth of field and separate your subject from the background. Creative subjects for macro photography. A plethora of creative opportunities arises with macro photography. Water droplets, flowers, and insects are a few common topics. Examine commonplace items such as textiles, produce, and foliage for their many textures and designs. Take pictures of the minute features on commonplace objects like jewelry, money, and even food. Through the examination of minute details, you have the ability to elevate commonplace objects into remarkable artistic creations. 10. Portrait photography ideas. Creative portrait lighting setups. Lighting is very important when taking portraits. Try out various lighting configurations to produce original effects. For gentle, diffused lighting, use window natural light. For a dramatic, polished image, consider utilizing a single off-camera flash in conjunction with a softbox. A lovely halo effect can be produced by backlighting your subject. To brighten shadows and give the eyes more catchlights, use reflectors. A variety of artistic portraits can be achieved by combining different lighting techniques. Unique poses and expressions. Your photographs might stand out if you can capture distinctive stances and expressions. Encourage your subjects to move freely while experimenting with various viewpoints and angles. To give your photos more background and appeal, use props. Include movement by allowing your subject to jump, twirl, or engage with their surroundings. In order to bring forth the individuality of your subject, concentrate on capturing real emotions and unguarded moments. 11. Night photography techniques. Capturing the beauty of the night sky. The opportunity to capture the calm beauty of the night sky is provided by night photography. When taking long exposures, use a tripod to keep your camera steady and avoid motion blur. To achieve the ideal balance, put your camera in manual mode and play around with different shutter speeds, apertures, and ISO settings. The best lens for capturing the immensity of the sky is a wide-angle lens. To prevent camera wobble, think about utilizing a self-timer feature on the camera or a remote shutter release. Use a longer exposure period for star trails in order to catch their movement. Light painting and long exposure tips. Using a light source to paint your scene over an extended exposure is known as light painting. To catch the motion of the light, place your camera on a tripod and set the shutter speed slowly. Try out various light sources such as glow sticks, sparklers, and flashlights to make interesting patterns and effects. To guarantee sharpness in your shot, use manual focus. To manage exposure, change the ISO and aperture settings. You can also utilize long exposure photography to catch the movement of objects in your scene such as cars, water, or even humans. 12. Abstract photography. Finding beauty in the mundane. The goal of abstract photography is to emphasize shapes, colors, and textures while taking pictures that are not instantly recognized. Examine common things for forms, lines, and patterns. Try varying the lighting, viewpoints, and angles to create abstract compositions out of everyday scenes. To highlight intriguing features and evoke intrigue, use close-up photos. Taking pictures of abstract subjects inspires you to look at the world differently and discover beauty in the ordinary. Techniques for abstract compositions. Experiment with focus and depth of field to get striking abstract photos. To accentuate certain compositional aspects and blur the backdrop, use a shallow depth of field. Try moving your subject or camera while utilizing a slow shutter speed to experiment with motion blur. Experiment with various post-processing methods to bring out the abstract quality in your photos, such as modifying saturation, contrast, and color. You may produce original, thought-provoking abstract art by defying conventions in photography. 13. Creative use of reflections. Capturing reflections in water and glass. Your shot can benefit from the dramatic and artistic addition of reflections. To make intriguing compositions, look for reflections in reflecting surfaces such as glass, water, or other surfaces. To lessen glare and regulate the strength of reflections, use a polarizing filter. Try a variety of viewpoints and angles to see which reflection is most interesting. You can employ reflections in your photos to provide depth, symmetry, or a strange feel. Creating surreal images with mirrors. Mirrors are an effective instrument for conjuring up fantastical and imaginative pictures. To add depth and dimension, use a mirror to reflect your subject or the surrounding area. Try arranging mirrors at various angles to warp reality and produce original compositions. Several mirrors together can create complex and enthralling patterns. In order to add a creative and intriguing touch to your images, mirrors can also be used to include objects that are not physically present in your scene. 14. Minimalist photography. Embracing simplicity in your shots. The core principles of minimalist photography are minimalism and concentration on the important things. Seek for scenes that have a single focal point and are tidy and uncluttered. To highlight your topic and establish equilibrium, use negative space. Select compositions that are bold and simple, frequently using a small color scheme. You are urged by minimalist photography to eliminate distractions and emphasize the elegance of simplicity. Techniques for effective minimalist compositions. Consider where to position your topic in the frame to produce minimalist compositions that work. For a powerful visual effect, center your subject or apply the rule of thirds. By concentrating on only one or two hues, you can simplify your color scheme. To direct the viewer's eye and establish harmony, use lines and shapes. To improve the minimalist look, try experimenting with various lighting setups, such as soft natural light or highly contrasted shadows. 15. Using textures and patterns. Finding and emphasizing textures. Your photographs can gain depth and interest from textures. Seek out materials with unique textures such as worn wood, rusted metal, or tree bark. To bring out the texture and cast shadows that draw attention to the details, use side lighting. Approach your subject up close, and if needed, use a macro lens to capture the detailed patterns. You may give your photographs a tactile touch by highlighting textures. Incorporating patterns creatively. Compositions with patterns can be visually striking. Look around you for patterns in colors, forms, or lines. Try varying your viewpoints to identify the most striking patterns. Employ patterns as your primary subject or background, and pay attention to how they relate to the other elements in your frame. Adding an unexpected ingredient to break the pattern can also give your composition a unique twist. Creative use of patterns can produce visually appealing and well-balanced visuals. 16. Double exposure photography. Techniques for creating double exposures in camera and in post. Using double exposure photography, two pictures are combined into one frame. It's possible to snap two pictures and combine them in camera using the built-in double exposure option found in many cameras. Double exposures can be produced in post-processing with programs like Photoshop if you want greater control. To get the desired look, layer two photographs and play around with the blending modes and opacity. Try out various backdrops and subject combinations to produce original strange pictures. Creative ideas for combining images. Consider the interplay between the two photos when producing double exposures. Blend landscapes and faces to create surreal scenarios. Employ silhouettes to create a striking impression. Try experimenting with reflections, textures, and patterns to give your photos more nuance and complexity. Blend wide-angle and macro photos to experiment with scale. Don't be scared to try new things and stretch the limits of your creativity when it comes to double exposure photography. 17. HDR photography for creative effects. Basics of HDR photography. In order to produce a single image with a larger dynamic range, high dynamic range, HDR photography entails taking numerous exposures of the same scene at different exposure levels. To guarantee that the exposures line up precisely and to keep your camera stable, use a tripod. Use the auto bracket mode on your camera to record the various exposures. Utilize in-camera processing or HDR software to combine the photos and modify the tone mapping. Using HDR to create surreal images. Images that are hyper-realistic and strange can be produced with HDR photography. The nuances in the highlights and shadows can be brought to life to produce a striking alien impression. Try out several tone mapping configurations to get the desired effect. To capture the minute details in interiors, exteriors, and architecture, use high dynamic range HDR. Achieving a dreamlike quality without resorting to unduly artificial outcomes is all about striking the right balance. 18. Creating depth and dimension. Techniques for adding depth to your photos. Your photographs can become more vibrant and captivating by adding depth. To bring the viewer's attention into the picture, use leading lines. Use foreground components to establish perspective and size. To adjust the depth of field, try varying the aperture and focal length. You may also add depth and character to your composition by layering different elements. Using layers and foreground elements. In your images, foreground items can provide context and intrigue. Frame your topic using natural features such as water, rocks, or plants. To provide depth, use architectural features like arches, windows, and entrances. Try a variety of viewpoints and angles to see which composition works best. Images that are visually rich and immersive can be produced by utilizing layers and foreground elements. 19. Storytelling through photography. Creating a narrative with your images. Photography is an effective narrative medium. Consider the narrative you wish to convey through your photos and the roles that each component plays in it. Create a visual narrative by assembling a collection of pictures that depict various events and viewpoints. Observe your subject's interactions, behaviors, and feelings. Employ color, lighting, and composition to portray the tone and feel of your narrative. Tips for capturing emotion and context. Authentic emotions and context can help your images have a greater effect. Seek out unguarded moments that showcase your subject's personalities and feelings. To catch details and facial expressions, use close-ups. Include environmental details to set the scene and create a fuller narrative. Watch for and seize the crucial moments that best express the mood of the scenario. You may produce striking and unforgettable photographs by concentrating on creating a story. 20. Incorporating post-processing for creativity. Basic editing techniques for enhancing creativity. In order to improve and polish your digital photos, post-processing is a crucial component of digital photography. Start with simple settings like exposure, white balance, and cropping. To bring out the colors and features in your photo, adjust the contrast, saturation, and sharpness. Try out several presets and filters to get the desired effect. Don't be scared to make risky changes in order to provide a special and imaginative result. Advanced editing tricks and tips. Utilize tools like layers, masks, and blending modes to produce intricate and imaginative effects while editing at a higher level. To draw attention to particular regions of your image, experiment with selective color tweaks. To bring out the light and shadows, use burning and dodging. To create depth and interest, play around with texture overlays and digital composites. You can freely alter your photos and realize your artistic vision through post-processing. I'm grateful that you're traveling with me through the fascinating and imaginative realm of photography. I hope these tricks and approaches have motivated you to experiment and push the limits of your own photography. Keep in mind that creativity has no boundaries. Whether you're using double exposures to create bizarre compositions or photographing the minute details in macro photography, don't forget to interact with other photographers and share your work. By observing things from several angles and exchanging views, we can develop and learn. Don't stop trying new things, maintain your curiosity, and most of all, enjoy taking pictures. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more photography tips and inspiration. Feel free to leave your questions or comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Happy shooting!